Hello, welcome in. If you're here listening to this podcast, that means you're destined for something great, and we both know it to be true. So without further ado, welcome to the Dark Matter Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Dark Matter podcast for inspired creators. Today, I have an exciting interview with Scott Maderer. His professional title is a stewardship coach, and although he specializes in a ton of different things from productivity and time management all the way down to finances, today we're going to talk about how to find clarity on your desired impact. This has been something that has come up a lot. I always get so much feedback on it. So we brought in a professional. So without further ado, Scott, how are you? Welcome to the podcast. And yes, if you could, just a quick bio, a little bit about yourself to introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure, absolutely. I'm doing awesome, and thanks so much for having me on today. I appreciate it. Hope it brings value to the listener. So I was an educator. I did that for 16 years. I taught science in the great state of Texas, or not so great of state of Texas, depending on how you feel about the state of Texas, I guess. But I did that for 16 years, taught middle school, taught high school, was really involved in science reform and teacher education and improving science in the state. Eventually, I left that, kicked around, did a couple of different things for a while, and then eventually got hired by an educational testing company. And in other words, I went from teaching to testing. My students said I joined the dark side, but yeah, but whatever. So I started doing that, worked myself up into an executive position there. I was what they call a senior director, ran a fairly large team of leaders, and then folks reporting to those leaders. Spent a lot of time on airplanes and airports and in hotel rooms and conference rooms and on the road all the time. Did that for 11 years. Loved that as well. I love teaching. I love that. And the parts that I always loved was the pouring into and developing others, whether that was the students, whether that was the leaders in the company, whether that was the client, all of that kind of work. And eventually my wife and I went through our own particular journey of dealing with financial stress. I was suicidal because of finances. We nearly got divorced because of finances. And as we changed our life and started living in a really weird, different way, people started coming up to us and going, y'all are weird. Do you think you could help me be weird? And so from that, the coaching business was born. And so while I was kind of climbing the corporate ladder, I was starting this coaching business on the side. And it evolved over time, started with finances, and then I added in time and productivity. And now I've kind of coalesced and realized that time and money typically are the symptom. And the real problem is what I call talent, which is that ideal of finding what is our calling, what is our passion, how do we make an impact, what do we do to both live out what we're designed and built to do and make a big impact on the world. And so, I jokingly say, yeah, I tell people I do productivity and money, but the real truth is all we ever do is talent, because how you handle your time, how you handle your money is really all about how you handle yourself.
That's incredible, and there's so much after hearing this, I want to dive into, and of course, I do want to get into stewardship coaching and your coaching and your current offerings. But before we do, I think there is a little bit I want to dive into. So, of course, you kind of
Sure.
mentioned that there was a bit a rocky time, right, with you and your wife. How did you work through that? What were some of the things that you felt? Because I know for me, as some of my listeners are maybe starting a business with their partners, right? Or they're trying to do something. They're at that point where they're trying to get more, they're past that comfortable stage, but they're not yet at that new stage. So, there's a lot of challenges that come up. So, what were some of the things that you experienced? And, how did you guys get on the same page? And then, yeah, how did you build a plan for success and then turn everything around?
Communication is key. And kind of really looking at it again, money was the symptom for us. It wasn't actually the problem. The problem was communication. At the end of the day, I was protecting my wife. I think a lot of men do this. We see ourselves as the provider, we see ourselves as the protector. And I was shielding her from the debt and other things that were going on. I made about $40,000 a year at that time. We had about $68,000 in debt. It's like, what are we doing? And that's where the suicidal feelings for me were coming from, because I felt like if I died, I was literally worth more than when I was alive.
Mm.
And it's a fallacy. I was telling myself this. Again, looking back on it now, I know it wasn't true, but that's how it felt at the time. And eventually some messaging came into my life that made me realize that, hey, wait a minute, maybe there are some things I can do. Maybe I have more control than I feel like I do. Because the truth was, where that feeling was coming from was a feeling of hopelessness, right? I can't do anything about this. And so I was teaching when this started, and my wife and I literally came clean. I went to sit down with my wife and I said, hey, here's how I've been feeling. Here's what's going on. Now, here's the funny thing. My wife's a really smart lady. She actually knew all of this already.
Okay.
And she's trying to shield me by not adding to my stress by talking to me about it. Right.
Wow.
So we're each protecting the other one, which is making it worse, And when we sat down and came clean, it's like, okay, well, do you think we can do something about this? Yes. Okay. What can we do? And we started making a plan. Now, truth is, the plan did not work the way we sat down and made the plan. It didn't. I mentioned we had $68,000 worth of debt. By the end of it, we actually paid off $75,858.42.
Wow.
You'll notice that's more because as we're going through all of this, I actually changed jobs. I left teaching and like I said, did a few different things for a while, and then eventually went into the corporate. I also ended up with a collapsed lung twice, once in December, once in January. Got to pay for all of that twice on insurance. Yay. Anyone who knows how insurance works, it's like new year, new payments, that kind of thing. So all
Right.
of that got added to it. So in truth, the plan didn't work the way we sat down and made it. But what worked is the fact that throughout it, we continued to communicate, we continued to talk about it. And out of that, when the coaching started happening, again, we were communicating together and saying, wait a minute, maybe this thing that we're doing, helping other people, could turn into a business. My wife 100% is part of the business. Now, she's the silent partner. She doesn't like to be on stage. She doesn't like to talk. She kind of does it from the back of the room, that kind of thing. But she's 100% part of the business, supports what I do as a coach, is my sounding board, my partner. So I get that idea of, going into business with somebody. And again, whether it's a partner in terms of your spouse or whether it's a partner in terms of a partner, the key to all of that is around that idea of communication and opening it up. And then as you get clear on things, putting a plan in place, executing on the plan with the realization that it is not going to work the way you had planned. But the truth is, having the plan lets you then adjust and modify and what I call refocus, so that you can gain control again and set a new plan and then just keep moving forward.
I love it. So I have another question based on this. How powerful do you think your thoughts are when it comes to, creating this? Because, from a lot of the things that I learned and I teach is, your thoughts really create your reality, and hearing some of the things that you were experiencing. Yeah, no one can tell you that you shouldn't feel the ways that you do. And, when we're
Yep.
experiencing the things ourselves, we take it how we feel, So in your experience, and just based on everything you've been able to create, how much weight do you put on thoughts? And yeah, talk a little bit about that.
So I look at it as a feedback loop. And here's what I mean. I think people will ask, which comes first, action or belief? And I think the answer is yes. It's not really an either or, because I think it's a circle. You believe something, so you act in a certain way. You have certain thoughts, and those create certain behaviors. And then those behaviors reinforce those thoughts, which then create new behaviors, which reinforce, and you're kind of in this loop. Now, here's the thing, that can work for you or against you. If you believe things that are helpful and hopeful and drive you forward, and you have this sense of, I'm content, I like who I am, I like where I am, I like what I do, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to drive for more.
Mm.
And more doesn't necessarily mean more money or more responsibility. It just means more in your life, more of the things that you truly value, the why behind the what. Money is a what. The why is more important than the what.
Right.
Because why do people want money? They want money for freedom, for flexibility, for safety, that's what they really want. The money is just the tool to get there. So having your own career. Why do you want your own career? Usually people say for certain things. Why do you want your own business? There's a list. Those are the whys, and those are the things that drive you. And again, that gets back to that belief. So if they're hopeful and they're helpful, it's a positive feedback loop. If they're not hopeful and helpful, it's a negative feedback loop. So if you have language in your own mind that tells you things like, I'm lazy, I'll never be able to do this, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, whatever, then you begin to act in that way, which reinforces that belief. So which is more important, change how you act or change how you believe? Well, they're connected. So start. If you're working with somebody that can help you work on the belief side, great. If you're working with somebody that can help you take action, great. Because either way, you'll start feeding back and changing the direction of that momentum in a positive direction. That's where you get the advice like, hey, if you want to be a writer, start writing. And there's truth to that in terms of the action, because it reinforces belief. So how important is it? It's 100% important. And so is action. It's not a 50-50, it's 100-100, because
Right.
they feed back into each other.
I love this. And, I heard something recently where the guy was saying, 99% of the success that people create are the thoughts, the beliefs, the habits,
Mhm.
right? It's more internal. And if you can't really even conceptualize success, you have one side that's believing, and then you have the other side that's doubting, and then they just cancel each other out and people stay in their
Right.
situation. So for someone that is really trying to better their life. They know they want more, right? They see it, maybe they dream about it, but they aren't really getting the reinforcement or the signs of it. Where would you start with them to really start taking things step by step and moving it in that direction of, really creating the life that they want?
So the first thing is getting clear on what that means. So a lot of times we'll say things like, I want to be more successful, or I want to be happier. Great. And we think we're being real clear. Like, I can tell you, hey, I want you to help me be successful. And in my head, I've just painted a very clear picture for you of what I'm after.
Mm.
Truth is, you have no idea, because what your definition of successful is, but you don't know mine. And the truth is, most of us actually don't know our own definition of something like success. We've never stopped to think about it. We've never stopped to put a picture around does it look for success. What would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that smell like? What would it mean in my finances? What would it mean in my career? What would it mean in my relationships? Because that's the truth too. We're not little buckets, we're a whole person. We have all of this stuff in our life. And a lot of times we think about success, we just think about something like career and business.
Mm.
But if you have a great career or you have a wonderful business and you've been divorced 7 times, and have no happiness in your relationships, are you really successful? Well, some people would say yes, and other people would be like, oh, no, absolutely not. That's a very important part of my success. So getting clear on what do you mean when you say you want to have more
Mm.
in your life is kind of the most important step. Now, a quick exercise that you could do to give you some inkling, and this is really a 2-part exercise. I share this as one of the resources that people can get that we'll share at the end of the show. But the first part is looking backwards. I'm going to skip that for now, and I'm going to talk about the looking forward step. So looking forward is about kind of knowing your destination, knowing your map, just like a GPS. Truth is, if you put in an address in your GPS, the way it draws the map is it goes to the end of the map where you want to go, and then it draws the route backwards to where you are. Okay.
Mm.
It starts from your destination. We have to do the same thing with our mind and our behavior. We have to start from the destination. So, quick exercise. I set this in an airport earlier. You heard me mention I spent a lot of times at airports. This is in honor of that period of my life. Imagine for a minute you've been on one of those trips and it's 5 years from today. You've gone off on the airport, you've flown to somewhere, now you're flying home. And you know how a lot of times you have that airport that you land in and then you connect to another plane and then you fly home? So you've landed in that connecting airport and you trot across the airport real quick, looking for your gate. You find the new gate, and you look up at it, and there's those dreaded words, flight delayed. It's like, hey, yay. So you go up and how long is the flight delayed? 4 hours. So you're now stuck in that middle airport, that liminal space in the middle of nowhere for 4 hours. So you do what anyone does when they're stuck in an airport for 4 hours. Depending on your particular kind of poison and the time of day, you either go find a bar or a restaurant. You're either going to go grab a bite to eat or grab something to drink. Now, I'm a teetotaler, so I'm going to go to the restaurant. Imagine you're walking into that restaurant 5 years from today. You're stuck there for 4 hours, and as you walk in, you hear a voice from across the restaurant. Hey, how you doing? You look over, and there's a friend of yours that they moved away, and you haven't seen them for 3 or 4 years. They moved away. You got busy. They got busy. You've talked every once in a while on the phone, but you really haven't stayed in touch. They're like, how are you doing? You're like, I'm doing fantastic. How are you? Turns out you're both stuck in the airport for 3 or 4 hours. So you go grab a corner table, you sit down, and your friend looks at you and looks you in the eye and goes, man, it is so great to see you. Haven't seen you for 5 years. You look fantastic. How has life been going for you? And you look at your friend and you go, you know what? These last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life because. Now that's your job. Write what comes after the word because. Or take a voice recorder and go for a walk and talk about it. What would your relationships look like? What would your career look like? What would your business look like? What would your life look like? What would your finances be like? What would all of those different components of your life, your health, your wellness, your ability to do things, where would you be living? What would it look like? What would it feel like? Paint a really good picture of what would make you honestly tell somebody, man, these have been the best 5 years of my life, and mean it. Because now all of a sudden that becomes that roadmap and that destination. That becomes that point that you can point the GPS at and go, that's kind of the direction I want to head. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work to put that into place and to begin to move that direction. And guess what? It's not going to work out exactly the way, see earlier comment, the plan's not going to work exactly the way you plan. Odds are good. Some things that are going to happen that are going to be bad, and some things that are going to happen that are going to be great, because that's just the way life is. But by having that direction, you now can work backwards and go, what is the smallest action I can take today? What's the belief I have to have? What's the behavior I have to have? What's the habits, the skills, the whatever, to begin moving in that direction? And that gives you that direction to move in.
Yeah, this is going to hit home for a lot of people, because it's to your same point. Everyone's end result or, dream scenario looks very different. And so, you can paint the
Completely different.
picture. Yeah, you can paint the picture of like, oh, I've generated X amount of millions, or I got my dream body, or I have my dream relationship. And for some people, it's going to resonate. For other people, it won't, right? And so I love here what you're really, you light up, right? You're obviously very passionate about this stuff. And one of the key words that I've heard you say throughout, this interview so far is talent. Why do you focus so much on helping people find their talent? What does that mean to you? And, why is that such an important, maybe like key phrase or key thing, key attribute for someone?
And thank you for asking that, because I think there's a lot of confusion sometimes. So I'm going to switch to a slightly different word, but it's related. And that word is calling. Earlier, I said career and business, but there's also this thing that we call calling. And what's interesting is we use a lot of times the word calling to talk about our career. But the truth is that talent that you're talking about, to me, it's bigger than just our career. It's bigger than just what we do for a living. It's bigger than just our gifts, if that makes sense, the things that we're good at, because trust me, every one of you has things, every single person has things that they're really good at. And usually, by the way, you don't know what they are because they come easy to you. And other people are like, dude, it's so impressive when you do XYZ. And you're like, what are you talking about? That's simple. Everyone can do that, and we dismiss our own abilities. So it's not any of that stuff. It's all of that stuff, but it's also more. So what's interesting is the word career, the root word for career is the root word for cart.
Mm.
So a career is like a cart. It's a mode of transportation, something that gets you from point A to point B. Okay. That's the thing in modern parlance that usually pays us money. That's our career. But our calling, the root word is actually the word vocation. We use
Mm.
the word vocation and career as if they're synonyms. They're not. They're completely different words. Vocation has the same root word as vocal or vocalization. It means to be called. It means to have something outside of you, something bigger than you, give you a direction or a passion or a purpose that isn't just you. So all of a sudden, it's not the I want to make $1 million thing anymore. It's the but why do you want to make $1 million? What impact do you want to have on the world? How do you want to change other people's lives? Now, by the way, that's the way to make $1 million. Real truth is if you want to be a millionaire, go impact other people because that's where you'll actually get paid. And so your career and your calling could be the same, but they also could be completely different too. It's okay that they're not identical. I actually know some people that have a career that pays them very well so that they have the freedom to go over here and do things that they truly feel called to do, maybe a nonprofit, maybe run a foundation, something that it's not going to pay them, but they can do that because this other thing is the engine that drives it. So they don't have to be the same. That's one of the confusions that we have is we put our talent, we say, okay, that's what I do and what I get paid for. It's like, well, that's a small sliver of your talent bucket. It's all of that stuff.
Hmm.
So then people go, okay, well, then how do I know what that is? Here's the bad news. You don't. Okay. You discover it. It's not a no thing.
Hmm.
It's literally something that you have to begin to uncover over time.
Hmm.
And it takes action to uncover it. Because what happens is we do things, we get feedback, we get feelings, we get motivation, we get connection. You talked about I light up. You find the things that you go, man, when I talk about this, I light up, and
Right.
everyone around you is going, dude, whatever it is, you're drinking right now, we want some of it because, you're on fire. What's going on?
Hmm.
And but you don't find that because it comes down like from above with this lightning bolt and says, this is what you are. You discover it by going out and experimenting and playing and uncover it. And it's why it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's not like you have a calling. It's you find your calling or you discover your calling or you uncover your calling because it kind of shifts and changes in some ways as you get more experience and more knowledge and more understanding over time.
Hmm. I love the way that you put that because you're right. Like you don't really, it's more something that you stumble upon. And I used to
Yep.
say this a lot where, some of the best things that ever happened to me in my life were things that were unexpected. And, that's a lot of what it is. Like I want this thing, so I'm taking action towards it. And all of a sudden this little, thing came up or this person came into my awareness or, anything like that where
Mm-hmm.
it's just like I wasn't really even expecting it. And so I you kind of touched on it, but if someone right now is in a job or a business or in a relationship that they're kind of maybe feeling a little bit heavy with it, what would you recommend with that? Is it really understand why you're feeling that way and then work towards it? Is it, get clear on your goals and your vision and, the things will weed themselves out? I mean, I know they're all different with regards to like a relationship or a job or a business, but I mean, again, what would be that next thing for them if they're really wrestling with like a lot of internal turmoil and they want to, get rid of that and then move to that next piece?
I think for most of us, we simultaneously want to externalize things like that. In other words, this relationship is bad because of them. This
Mm,
job is bad because I work for a bad boss.
mm,
This, whatever it is. And by the way, I'm not even saying that that's not got some truth to it. It certainly may have some truth to it. It may even be 100% true.
right.
but you can't change that other person. You can't make your boss be a better boss. You just can't. Now you can do things to create an environment where hopefully they'll learn to be a better boss, but you can't really make them change. The only thing you have control over is yourself, your own thoughts, your own actions, your own behaviors. So you're right. It is getting clear. What do I actually want? What is the purpose behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it? Because here's the thing. I have seen people have a job that they absolutely detest. And they're like, I want to quit this job. I want to get out of it. But then we get clear on their why. And all of a sudden they're like, you know what? This job is actually moving me closer to what I really ultimately want. And yeah, it may really stink today, but it is worth holding my nose and working through it. And because now I've got a reason to be here. It's no longer I'm stuck in this dead end job. It's I've chosen to continue to work here for X amount of time, or to get this thing, or to save up a certain amount of money, or to whatever it is. Or I want to start a business on the side and grow it until it's big enough and then I can quit. Whatever. You've got a purpose and it drives the action. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you show up for work and everybody's miserable and you're like, la, 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 and everyone's like, what's going on? Dude, what have you been smoking? How did what's going on? And it's like, it's because you care big enough about something else that you stop caring in a way about the fact that this is a bad thing. It's no longer miserable because it has purpose behind it. And again, that sometimes, by the way, leaving the job or the relationship is the exact right thing to do. So this is not a stay stuck in a dead end job and, suck it up or whatever. It's a get clear on why you are leaving if you're going to leave, or why you're staying if you're going to stay. Get clear on the why behind it. And then the what becomes very clear. And you can build towards that what. You can take the time it needs. You can push through it because you've got a big enough why to drive it. So I would say the first step is always getting back in touch with what is your ultimate goal, what is your why, that 5-year exercise we talked about earlier, all of those sorts of things, because then the choices you make are the best choices that you can make to drive you towards that, and they have a purpose behind it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, the idea that events that happen, they're neither good nor bad. We put the meaning towards it, right? And
Yep.
when you know your why, you know the direction you're headed, sometimes something that you feel might be a bad thing actually is for your best intention, right? And that's why I always like to allude to, your mindset, your thoughts, your beliefs, and like really knowing what you're working towards. Because if you don't know what you're working towards, my favorite analogy of this is like, imagine there's like a little Scott in the middle of the ocean with a paddle and a boat, and you're seeing this goal, this dream, whether it's a financial goal. You see it over here at the island, so you start paddling towards the little island, and then next thing you know, there's a dream person for you on this side, and you're like, you know what, I'd prefer that. And then you start going that way, and what ends up happening is, because we don't have a chief aim or a direction for our life and where we want to go, we just end up circling and not really making any progress. So I love that a lot of this is really understanding the why, understanding what it is, because only until you have the clarity, you can't really make educated decisions. We're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. And so
Right.
I see this, and I really want to touch quickly on, what is stewardship coaching? What is that? What is it that you're currently doing with it? And what do you yeah, what are you working on today with your coaching business?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the one, to my knowledge, at least for me, I'm the one that came up with the title of stewardship coaching. I'm sure there's other people out there that use the word, but so stewardship in a lot of circles, in a church environment, that kind of thing, it's kind of an old-fashioned word. And what it boils down to is, back in the day, right, there was a lord of a castle, and they owned a bunch of land, and they owned, all of the people that worked on the land kind of worked for them, the feudal kind of relationship. Picture that kind of thing. But the truth is, the lord, the guy who ran the castle, he was not going to run all of the minutia of running the castle. He was too busy out, hunting boars and flying hawks and doing, he was living a life of leisure. He's not going to do all the hard work. So they would appoint somebody as the steward over the castle. So think of the steward as sort of like the manager. They were the person that ran all the day-to-day stuff. They controlled money coming in and out. They controlled property. They controlled what people were doing. They had all of this authority, but they didn't own anything. The Lord owned it all. So in religious circles, obviously this is an analogy, and I do work with a lot of people of faith, different faith beliefs where this aligns with them, this idea of our job is to take care of the things that we've been given and blessed, not just for ourselves, but for the wider world, for the wider impact, to make a positive change on the world. And that kind of relationship is called stewardship. It's the idea that these things aren't just mine. I don't own them, even though I've given responsibility over them. So I'm given the responsibility for my wife, my business, my child, my relationships, my attitude, my whatever, but I don't actually own it. And what it does is it lets you hold things with an open hand, where you get the concept of, rather than grabbing tight of everything and trying to hold on to it, you can hold it open and go, it's mine to manage, but at the end of the day, I don't own it. I'm just the temporary holder of it. And it kind of changes your mindset and how you look at things. And so stewardship coaching is this idea of getting our mindset in that frame as a business owner. And that's who I work with mainly, as small business owners. A lot of times there's somebody making a transition from corporate into a business. And we try to help you get your time, your talent, and your treasures right. Remember what I said earlier, really, we only work on talent, but usually you think the problem is time and money. It's the guy who started a business and hasn't been able to pay himself for 3 years. It's like, okay, let's figure, that's not really a business yet. That's a hobby, so let's turn it into a business. If that's what you want to do, if that's your why and your passion and your drive, let's figure out how to do that. And usually the problem is showing up in time and money, but the real problem is between our ears and in our heart. It's the attitude towards which we hold the business and the beliefs by which we hold around the business, and that power of choice and that power of making decision. When we get that right, all of a sudden the time and the money take care of themselves. And so there's a lot of different tools and techniques I use around that. It's something that I've been working on 35 years, though my mother says that I started coaching when I was 8. I was always kind of that mindset. I just didn't know what to call it. And now I've started calling it stewardship coaching, because that sort of has that resonating idea of we're the manager of these resources and these blessings, but we're not the owner.
Yeah, I love that, because I know a lot of people that have possessions and we kind of touched on this before, but when you were talking about the career, it's like, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm, this career title. And it's like, that's not who you are, that's your title. And so with this, the same thing, a lot of us, maybe base our identity based on the things that we have. And so I love the concept behind, we're just here responsible of it for now, but it's not ours indefinitely. And it's a freeing mindset to have, when you can really embody that and, own it, your your attitude and mentality, of course.
It lets you become content. And again, I used that word earlier. The idea of contentment is, because a lot of times people hear the word contentment and they think, oh, that means you're not driven. You're just kind of stuck where you are or whatever. That's actually not true. The word for that is complacent. So complacent is when I feel stuck. I feel broke. I feel trapped in a dead-end relationship or a dead-end job. That's complacency, right? I'm trapped. I'm stuck. Contentment is, I love where I'm at. I love the good about it. I love the bad about it. I'm not ignorant of the fact that there's bad stuff. And I'll even work to change that bad stuff, but I'm still content with who I am and where I am and what I am, because I know who I am and what I am. And, because I have that knowledge, I can be content in where I'm at, even while I'm working to change it and to move. So again, back to that job situation. When you have the why, you're no longer, quote, stuck in a dead end job, even if you choose to stay there, because it's not stuck anymore. You've made an active choice. And so contentment is that ability to have that power of choice whether things are good, whether things are bad, you still recognize the power that you do have, which is always the power of choice. Because we sell ourselves short. We take away our power of choice. People say things all the time. I had to do that.
Mm.
I had no choice. Like, no, you had a choice. I mean, because let's face it, if I took every single one, you that's listening right now, that you've got these ear pods in and you're listening, and this is going to be a horrible example, but go with me. If I held a gun to your head and I said, hey, you're going to have to do this or I'm going to shoot you, there are probably some things that you would do. If I said, do this or else I'll shoot you, you'd be, absolutely, I'll do it. No problem. Here's my wallet. No problem. You want my wallet? There are other things, though, that if I said, hey, you're going to have to do this or I'm going to shoot you, you'd look at me and go, dude, you're going to have to shoot me. I'm not going to do it. So even in that extreme of a situation, you actually have the power of choice, not the guy with the gun. Because you could say, I'll do it or I won't do it. And the consequences of that. We always have the power of choice, and yet we give it up all the time. And we use our language, we lose our beliefs, and we say things like, I have to, I'm stuck, I had no choice. Yeah, you did. Own it. Even if it was a bad choice, you still had a choice, Right. And so, that's that ownership mentality. That's the thing that you do own. You don't own your stuff.
Right. And I love that, because that's another big maybe pillar to a lot of the things that I preach, is having ownership, unreal ownership on the things that happen in your life. You get rear-ended, you still take ownership of it, because only when you take ownership of things that happen can you actually influence the outcomes and change a lot of the things on the outside. So two questions left for you, Scott. This has been incredible, but one, I guess the second last question here. What are you currently working towards? So you obviously have your coaching practice. Like, I mean, do you have a goal that you're working towards? Do you have like a main thing? Like, what is on the horizon for you in your current situation?
I'm always looking for more coaching clients. I've worked with over 1,000 clients in 20 countries, 38 states. I work with folks all over the world. Turns out people are people no matter where you are, So it's like, if we can understand each other, we can work together. But so that's definitely part of it. I also had a book come out last year called Inspired Living. And so, of course, I'm out promoting that and looking for stages to get on and places to talk about that as well. But, honestly, I'm in a place in my business where I don't have a big, like, oh, I want to be $1 million business next year, or, those sorts of things. It is much more about, I want to make an impact. I want to help people. So if I can do that through one-on-one coaching, through workshops, through speaking, that's all the how. The why behind it is, I want to make an impact on helping other people live an intentional, inspired life.
I love that. And so if people want to learn more about you, maybe the offerings, if you have free offerings, things like that, where can people go to find more about you?
Absolutely. So I put together a resource page just for your listeners, and you can find that over at inspiredstewardship.com, which is my website, and then just put in /dark. And what you'll find there is there's some free resources you can just download. You can put in your email and download. There's information about the book I just mentioned, as well as my own podcast called Inspired Stewardship, and several other things. You can find a link to buy the book and all of that. And again, all of that, there's also a link if you want to set up a quick call and have a conversation with me. You can jump on a call with me, and you can find all of that over at inspiredstewardship.com and then /dark.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Scott. This has been a fantastic conversation. And of course, to the audience, this was Scott Maderer, stewardship coach. And you've seen here today how knowing your talents, your treasures, could really move your life in that direction that you want to go, whatever direction it is that you want for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, share, subscribe to it all. I appreciate it. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.